Hey everyone, my name is Marcus Burnett, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about the WordPress Photos directory, the open source library of photos that I've recently become a moderator for and I've contributed to. And so this is what I'm talking about here. So we're almost at 1,000 free photos now, and it's shaping up to be quite the nice library of photos. But what I really wanted to look at is a way for if you were to contribute. It's easy to do. You just go to the site and submit your photos, and the moderators will take a look at them and will approve or reject them. But once they're approved, then you'll have your own page within the site. But if you wanted to pull some of those photos out into your own site, then I wanted to dive into a little bit of some JavaScript and jQuery for you to be able to hit the WordPress API and grab all of your photos and put them on your website. So here is kind of the what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and put something together like this. These are all my photos that I've contributed, and I actually have these being pulled into mburnett.com/wp photos, and I'm using the same jQuery script that I wrote in the CodePen pen over there to pull in the photos to the WordPress photo directory page on my personal website. I'll let them load. And it's grabbing these 10 at a time, so it takes a moment for them to load into the page because it's looping through 10 photos at a time and then displaying them on the page. And I'll show you how that works as well. So you can see back here at the page, I currently have 80 photos approved, and you can see them all listed here on the page. So with that, let's open up a new pen and I'll show you how it's done. Alright, so here I have a brand new CodePen pen just at codepen.io. I've logged in and created a new pen, and we're just going to kind of start from scratch here and add our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript along the way. So to get started, let's just go ahead and set ourselves a little bit of groundwork, add a heading. This is going to be my photos, and let's give us somewhere for those photos to be. So I just have a heading and a div with a class of all photos, and that's where we're going to load those photos in. We'll come back and do a little bit of styling, but for now, let's jump straight into the JavaScript that we need. And I'm going to start by adding jQuery, because that's what I'm going to use to pull this in. Like I showed on my site, I have them loaded in, and jQuery is already part of WordPress. And so because the site is WordPress, I just went ahead and used jQuery because it's already provided for me. So let's start here with jQuery, some JavaScript, and we'll go ahead and add our URL for the WordPress.org Photos API. So let's say the API URL, and we'll figure out what it needs to be in a moment. After that, we're going to call jQuery's AJAX function, and we're going to pass a few things in here. The first thing we need to do is say what type of request this is, and this is a GET request because we're just getting some information from the API. The type of information that we're getting the data type is going to be JSON information, and we'll take a look at what that looks like when it's provided back. The URL is going to be API URL. Again, we'll come back to what that is in just a minute. And then what happens when that returns successfully. And we're going to run a function and pass the data into that function, and we'll fill that in just a little bit. There's some other things that we can do, but for now, let's just stick with this and let's talk about this API URL. We'll console.log the data here so we can look in the console and see what we get back. So for the API URL, the WordPress photo directory is at WordPress .org/photos. Again, here we have the latest photos, and the WordPress API is structured as WP JSON after that, and then WP again, and then V2. So this gets us into sort of the API pieces. Now, normally maybe you'd put posts here or something if you wanted to grab WordPress posts, but we are actually looking for the photos. So I'm going to go ahead and say photos, and when I hit enter, what's being returned here you can see is the JSON for all of the photos. In fact, this is actually the last 10 photos that have been added to the directory. So we're going to have to do a little bit of work still to make sure that we can grab all of the photos that we need, and then also narrow it down to just your own photos. In this case, I'll just go with my photos. So what we'll do is we'll add an author parameter, and in my case it's all of those numbers, and I'll show you in just a moment where I get that from. And we're also going to add a per page parameter, and just to keep it simple we'll make it 3, but we'll probably adjust that a little bit in a minute. So if I hit enter, now we can see, let's see, author is indeed the number that I specified, and this drone photo above John's Pass in Clearwater Beach I know is one of my photos. And if I scroll down here just a little bit, here's the next photo. And another photo. So these are 3 photos. Content rendered. Yeah, so red free sea of flowers is the other one. And then these were just shorter. Colored plastic eggs. And what you can see already is that the things that we'll need to pull out are listed here. We'll need the content rendered, which is our description. We'll need the actual link to the photo so people can go download it. And if I add an additional parameter, I will get information about the featured image, and that's what all of these photos are using. They're using the featured image field. And to get that, I just simply need to add and embed to the end of this string, the end of this URL. And what you'll see now is if I scroll down just a little bit, here's some of the embedded information, including some URLs for the author. And let's see, if I scroll down just a bit here, I should, yeah, the WP featured media is the featured image, and that is where all of the file paths for the actual images exist. So we'll be using these to load the images into the page, and you can see that all the different default WordPress ones are loaded in here, so we can use, a smaller one like the large or the medium instead of pulling in a full size image for each of these. So this is our URL. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to paste it over here into let API URL equal, so that then it's used here. If I inspect and open the console, you'll see that I now have an array, and that array has 3 items in it, and those 3 items are my photos, all the different things that we just saw on the other page. And to get your author ID, currently is a little convoluted, but this is one of my photos here. If I click on it, you'll see that this is the page for that photo, and if I click on my username, it'll take me to the page with all my photos. And if I view the source here on this page, the body class has author hyphen and my username, but also author hyphen and the user ID. So this is where I got the number from. Let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger so you can see it. author 156021155. So this is where I grabbed that number from to be able to use over here in this URL. So we have some things loading in here. We have our array. Now we just need to loop over that array and add that content to our all photos. So I'm going to go ahead and close this for now. And we'll go ahead and start adding to that. So what we have is data. Data is an array. We're going to say for each of our data pieces, each piece of the array, run a function. And we're going to say, let's get our indentation right here. For each one of these, let's say our image, well, let's just start with the title. The title is going to be data.title. Nice and simple. If I open our console back up, trying to keep the screen real estate easy to see here, but let's see. Open the console back up, and we can see inside this array, this is our data piece, so it's actually not going to be data.title. It's going to be this.title, this particular item in the array, and then the title is down here. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, title is not what we want because these are arbitrarily titled. What we want is the content rendered. So this is actually going to be content rendered to get our, it's kind of hard to see right now, but content rendered is going to get us our description here. So let's go ahead and let's say we have our title here. We're going to grab our all photos and append a, let's append another div with a class of single photo. And inside that single photo, we want to just add the title. So you can see they're already loading up here. Just for clarity's sake, I'm going to call this caption and caption because it's not really a title. But you can already see that those three are loading in here. These are the last three. If I change this from per page 3 to 10, then when it reloads, we should see the latest 10. So far, so good. Let's load a few different things in here still. We're going to want a download button and a link and the image itself. So let's say link equals this dot, I think it's just this dot link. And let's just go ahead and print those out so we can see what that looks like. We'll change caption to link for just a moment. And we can see that they're all different. And if I just take one of these and go there, we can see that it opens up to the page with the photo. Perfect. So let's do something with that. Let's wrap our caption in a link tag. Toss the link in there. Let's make sure these open up in a new window. Close our link tag. Oops. And let's go back to making that be the caption. And looks like I'm missing syntax there. Add that plus sign back. There we go. And all our captions are linked. Now, I'm actually not a huge fan of that. So let's move our caption before the link. And let's just say this is download. Give ourselves a little break in there. Oh, actually the caption is already repped in a paragraph tag, so we don't need to do that. So now we have caption and the download link, caption, download link, etc., 10 times currently. And so we can keep going from there. Let's go ahead and add our image. So let's say our image is this, and I've kind of scouted this ahead of time because it's kind of buried, but it's going to be in this embedded, and then it's WP featured media, and then it's the first one, so 0 dot media details dot sizes dot medium large. This is the size that I decided to go with. If you wanted to make it something different, you'd make that medium or large or full, and then the source URL. So that's a whole lot to just get the URL for the image, but let's give ourselves another break here and paste that in and see what we end up with. So here's the medium large image for this one, medium large image for the flowers, and so on, but that's not quite as fun, so let's make it something we can look at. So let's get that out of there. I'm going to add the image above the caption. So image source equals, and that's where our image URL will go. So now let me go ahead and close the console again and give ourselves some room. Now you can see that the medium large size is getting loaded in here. So that gives us 10, because that's what we've said here, per page 10, and mostly gets us where we want. So if you have less than 100 photos, then you can certainly bump this up to 100, the per page number, but 100 is where it caps out. So if you have more than 100, then putting 101 or 200 or so just will return nothing, and that's just a limitation of the WordPress API. So what you need to do is actually pass a page number and iterate over several pages worth of images, if that makes any sense. So we'll do that in just a moment. I'm actually going to move this into our Ajax function here just to make it a little bit easier on ourselves. And I'm going to add page equals 1, which shouldn't change too much. Now, photo did change because currently it looks like some additional photos that I've submitted are being approved. So don't let that fool you. The order hasn't changed, and the number of photos hasn't changed. It's still 10, but now there are a couple more couple different ones at the beginning, and some at the end have dropped off because while I'm in the process of this video, a couple more photos have been approved, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and let's do a little bit of styling just to make this a little bit easier for us to see. So first things first, I'm going to give ourselves usual box sizing. Don't think those matter anymore. Let's say that all photos display flex wrap. That should wrap them next to each other, but they're still too big. So let's say a single photo has a width of 20%. And now you can see that they're starting to fill in here. Definitely gonna need to do a little bit more cleanup. Let's give this image a class. And image source, image class equals single photo thumb, let's call it. Single photo thumb. Let's see. Let's give this an aspect ratio of 5:4, maybe. Kind of a landscape size. That's not quite working at the moment. Let's image max width 100%. 5:4 is actually a bit square. Let's go a little more landscape with it. Nope, that's too much. 6:4, also known as 3:2. You can see that it's squishing them, so I'm going to fix that by doing object fit cover. And that'll fit them back inside that aspect ratio without squeezing them too much. So we have them all kind of at the same aspect ratio landscape here. We have it sort of fitting inside the area. Let's give ourselves maybe a little bit of space here. Let's maybe do a margin of 1 rem all the way around, which is going to push that down to the next line. So we'll have to compensate for that. I think that's looking pretty good. There's plenty more that can be done here, but the idea isn't so much about the styling as it is about loading the photos in. And so far we've managed to do a lot of that. So let's look at making sure I have about 80, after these new ones have been approved, I think it's closer to 85 photos. So we don't just want to show the latest 10. Again, like I said, I could change the URL to say 100. In fact, let me just go ahead and do that so you can see. If I change that to 100, it's going to take a moment, but it will load all 100 or all 80 plus photos in all at once. But like I said, that will only do any good if you have fewer than 100 photos. So let's take a look at what this really needs to be. And that's just kind of loading 10 in at a time and iterating across. So I'm actually going to wrap this entire thing in a function called get photos. And then that get photos is going to take a page parameter, which is going to default to 1. So wrapped it all in a function, so now it's not doing anything, but if I then run that at the end here, it should go ahead and get all 10 of the photos. What we're going to do now is, so this data is coming in, we're getting 10 at a time. If it reaches 10, then it should run this whole thing again, upping the page number. So I'm going to replace this page equals 1 with page equals, and pass in our page variable here. You get the quotes right. So that shouldn't change too much because it's still passing in this 1, and that's great. And just to show you, if I passed in a 2 here, it should load in the second page of photos. And you can tell these are different photos now. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to come loop through each of these and add them to our all photos div. But when we get after this each here, we got to do a check and see, did we hit 10? So let's say there are 85 photos. It'll hit 10 8 times, and then on that 9th time, the length of the array will be 5. So then it won't pass the criteria of running again. So let's say if data.length is equal to 10, then we're going to up the page, which was 1, now it'll be 2, and then run get photos again, passing that page variable in. I hope that makes sense. So what it's doing is it's running, it did these 10, and then it said, okay, there were 10 in the array, so let me run this again and up that to page 2. Let me get the next 10 on page 2. So then here the next 10, and then it saw that there were 10, so it upped the page value to 3 and looped across it again, getting page 3, and so dumped all of the images in, looping across all of the pages until it got to however many there are. I believe it's 85 or so. And it said, okay, there were only 5. You know, it hit this if data length equals 10 and it was 5, so it didn't bother to run get photos again, and it just kind of ended. So I'll save that, and that's basically it. We'll go to full page view just so we can get kind of everything else out of the way and see it work. You can see even there for a moment it loaded those 10 and it was still blank down here, because then it had to go up and loop again and take a peek and see that there were more to load. And now it's loaded all of them in here. And then if there's one that somebody wants to download, you can click the download button and it will open in a new window in the WordPress directory because we pulled that link, and then they can download whichever size they want. So there you go. That's all there really is to it. The hard part there is just figuring out what that API URL needs to be, especially figuring out what your user ID is within the directory and being able to pull, just the ones that are authored by that user ID. I do have this other one that is sort of a bit more polished. It's got some hover effects and rounded corners and a little more styling. I also linked the image up to the photo in the directory and cleaned up the download button a little bit and made it a little bit nicer. So I will include a link to this pen in the show notes in the description down below. So go ahead and take a peek at that if you want to grab any of the code. It's freely available there for you. And yeah, have fun. Please do upload some photos to the WordPress photo directory. And yeah, I'd love to leave a link in the comments if you end up using this somewhere on your website, and be happy to share it and love to take a look at it. Till next time, bye bye.